I would like to welcome you all to our event tonight, or tonight from South Africa. And this is our event commemorating World Obesity Day, which is today, the 4th of March. And this webinar is proudly organized by the Physicians Association for Nutrition, a global medical nonprofit organization advancing nutrition in healthcare and medical education to reduce millions of diet-related deaths by promoting evidence-based practices of healthy diets for personal and planetary health. Our organization works at the intersection of health, climate, and food, with offices in 9 countries and project footprints in over 25 countries. So many of our PAN people are in the chat. I encourage you to reach out to them if you have a country in common or a region in common. So to introduce myself, my name is Dr. Nanine Wemer. I am a director at PAN International and PAN South Africa, and I'm very excited to be moderating this event this evening. And today's event marks the launch of our global campaign titled Nourish to Thrive, Overcoming Obesity Together, which aims to drive awareness and joint action with healthcare providers, doctors, and nutritional experts from all over the world. Our campaign underscores the need for a fundamental shift in the way obesity is understood, treated, and prevented, moving beyond restrictive approaches and embracing plant-rich, nutrient-dense nutrition as a key strategy in tackling this pressing health crisis. So we will be hearing today from our key members of the Global PAN community, with opening remarks from the president of PAN International Foundation, followed by a presentation from PAN Brazil's executive director, who will be sharing more about obesity in the context of Brazil. Thereafter, we will hear from Dr. Gregor, who will be sharing his take on how not to die from obesity. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please keep your microphones off. I have not heard any background conversations yet, but if I do reserve the right to mute you. Our event will be recorded and available for free after the event. So I will click record just after this introduction. There will be time allocated to questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So please post your questions in the chat and I will be monitoring them there. Note that we are collecting questions in the chat and not in the Q&A function, which is sometimes on Zoom. We did also collect some questions in our global community platform, PANCO, ahead of the meeting, and I have saved all those questions and I look forward to asking your questions. So, all right, now we are ready to get started. I am going to press record and then we will move into our presentations. All right, so it is already recording. Okay, so to open up our presentation today, I would like to introduce Kirsten, president of PAN International Foundation. Kirsten believes that food has the power to change lives. She is an expert on leadership, transformation, and communication, as well as an award-winning entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, senior advisor, and best-selling author. So we're very happy to have Kirsten as part of our leadership team at PAN. And yeah, now I will hand it over to you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Nanine, and it's such a pleasure, not just to be here today, but to see all of you, the many experts, nutritional, and from the nutrition side, from the medical side, and from all the sides that are needed to tackle the topic that we're addressing today. The global obesity crisis is amazing if you look at, and shocking if you look at the numbers. And it's not just, as you as experts know, it's not just a lifestyle issue. It is a major global health crisis affecting over 1 billion lives around the world. And among that 1 billion people, we're talking about 159 million children that are already affected with this disease. And believing in the World Obesity Foundation, in 20 years, we will talk about 4 billion people. 4 billion people affected by this disease that is not just life-threatening, it decreases the quality of life dramatically. So if those numbers weren't enough for PAN asking all of you and all of our partners around the world to cooperate on a different approach to obesity, because obviously the approaches that have been used to now have not been so efficient to reduce the numbers. Well, we want to aim high. Also, we want to dream a bit, especially with the passion that all our experts have from the medical, from the nutritional side, and backed by science, which is very important for the work of PAN. So there have been many obesity campaigns out there. I do realize that, being a campaign expert for quite some years, although I came more from a political and corporate field. But looking at obesity campaigns, I always felt that one part is missing. And that was the part of, I don't want to reduce. I don't want to count calories. I don't want to cut back, right? We want to, humans want to live life to the fullest. They want to think in less. People have the tendency to think in more. And PAN has based its campaign exactly on that. This is why we've introduced Nourish to Thrive, because we believe it's time to shift the conversation from calorie cutting and restriction to a more self-centered, nutrient-rich, and of course, plant-based approach to this life-threatening disease. And this is possible. As science tells us, the new approaches to obesity are not just plant-based and super healthy. There can also be extremely delicious. And I'm happy to see partners today. And of course, our keynote speaker, Michael Greger, which I'm very excited to have here today. And also Candice Schneider, our president of PAN Brazil, who will show you and share with you what we all can do if we lead an office or a practice, or if you're one-to-one conversations with our patients and our clients, what we can do to help to shift that conversation. So my role today is really to give you a warm welcome. I'm extremely happy to see all of you. I know the team has worked very hard to make this event happen, to kick off the campaign on this highly important day, but also to speak out an open invite to all of you. PAN has been able to grow so fast because not just of the people we have and of the knowledge and the passion that my team around the world holds, but because of partners around the world. And this campaign is all about partnership. So please, if you feel you want to grow your importance and your speech, reach out to PAN, to either the local office or the International Foundation, to me, and reach out and let's discuss how we together can overcome obesity. This would be my wish. This is the invite for you, and I will hand this back to Nanine, and I know she will be excited to take you further in the program. I wish you a very fruitful day, tons of discussions in the end. I wish for us many reach outs, many joint alliances that come out of this, because again, it's time to shift the conversation. It's time to offer something different to patients, and we have something great to offer. Science-based, delicious, and very healthy for the humans and the planet. Thank you, and a warm welcome from my side. Nanine, stage is back to you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. It's great to hear from you. Thank you for opening the conversation. And oh, where is my spotlight gone? All right, I'm back. So I'm busy looking at the chat and I'm seeing that there are people from all over the world. It's really fantastic to have such a global audience, from Portugal to Hungary, South Africa, Italy, and Germany. You know, we are all living in very different parts of the planet, but as health professionals, we struggle with similar challenges. And obesity is absolutely one of those challenges, and one of those challenges that we will fight together. So now I am so excited to introduce and take this conversation all the way to Brazil. And I will be welcoming Candice, registered dietitian and executive director at PAN Brazil. Candice is a nutrition expert working towards a more plant-based and sustainable future. I will add Candice's links in the chat for how you can connect with her and show support to Pan Brazil. Otherwise, Candice, over to you.
Thank you, Nanine. Thanks for having me. Just let me share my screen here. Everything's okay. Do you see my slides? Please let me know if you're seeing my
I can see your screen.
Okay, so I think everything's, because for me, I'm not seeing, so everything's good for everyone?
Yeah, can you make your screen full screen?
Let me
Your
see.
presentation.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah,
There we
I
go.
think, yes.
Thank you.
So thank you, Nanine, for having me, Kerstin, for this opportunity. I'm so happy to be here today with this SPAM community. I know we have people for so many countries here. I will start my presentation. Doing an overview of PAM, of how PAM's working in Brazil, and an overview of obesity crisis in Brazil. Obesity is already a public issue in Brazil. This is not only about excess weight. This is deeply connected in Brazil, and I know in so many developing countries, connected with malnutrition and food insecurity. So that's something that I want to show. We have our obesity on the rise in Brazil. But at the same time, Brazil has a paradox because we are a country that at the same time both underfeed and overfeed. We have like 27 in 2003, 27% of people now like 21 million people in situation of food insecurity in Brazil. And at the same time, we have like in 2001, 22% of our people are obese or overweight. So it is a huge paradox that we have in Brazil. Over the past 50 years, Brazil experienced a transition by decreasing our infection diseases and increasing in chronic diseases, and a shift from malnutrition for obesity. We have this when we talk about this food insecurity and malnutrition, many people assume that food insecurity only leads to hunger and undernutrition. But food insecurity often leads to obesity as well. Why? Because when families struggle to afford healthy food, they turn to cheaper, calorie dense, and ultra processed food. So are low, and there are low in essential nutrients. So this is not only affect adults, but particularly are damaging children. Poor nutrition during critical development years can lead to slower growth, cognitive impairments, and increased risk of chronic disease that we know later in life. So therefore, addressing obesity means addressing food insecurity and also malnutrition. Here, I want to just show a little bit of numbers, because Brazil, that is something that is astonishing, is like the fourth in the rank of obesity in the world. We just behind from United States, Canada, and Mexico. So we are a huge country with huge challenges in our health systems. Like we are saying, obesity is a crisis in Brazil, in the world, but especially when you're talking about youth. For example, some numbers that I put in here for you, that we have like 37% of Brazilian adults between 18 and 25 years old, there are overweight or obese. We have, when we talk about children, and the last number I think is something that we need to be worried and work towards, that 7% of Brazilian children under 5 years old are overweight, or 3% or 3% are obese. Something that this map shows that I want to show you, when you see these red and orange states in Brazil, are the poor states. So that's when we need to talk that food insecurity, and we talk about obesity is affecting poor communities. We call the food deserts, because in these states that there are poor states, is difficult to get fresh foods. So this population often recover in like this ultra-processed food, overweight, high in fat, and so on. So as we can see, this like the north, like the Amazon region, the northeast region on Brazil, they're always the most affected when we talk about obesity. So we can see that not even distributed equally across the country. So this increasing obesity is poses a serious health risk, including, as we know, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, certain types of cancer, and also are straining the healthcare system significantly in Brazil. And here I want to show you what our government are taking, what the measures in Brazil, and enter a little bit how can we help. So here in Brazil, we have like the food guide for the Brazilian populations. Our food guide encourages fresh and minimally processed food, and this guide is used for the government to purchase food for public hospitals, schools, and so on. We have in the recent years a law from front on pack labeling that are implemented to warn consumers about higher in fat, sugar, and any other and sodium content. So we have just recently in December, the government approved a tax on sugar drinks and soft drinks that aim to reduce soda consumption and curb obesity rates. Here, I just want to make a point. That's something that PAM, not only in Brazil, but in other countries, works towards government with advocacy, with policy being involved to pressure the governments to lower the taxes to natural and fresh foods and to higher the tax on ultra-processed foods. Another thing is that the government had a program, that school feeding program that aims to provide healthier meals in public schools. And this program is under a much longer program that is Brazilian Strategy for Prevention and Attention to Childhood Obesity, that is called Proteja in Brazil. There is launched in 2021 by the Ministry of Health, and is trying to deal with a lot of initiatives to tackle this childhood obesity that is comprehensive, like intersectional actions involving health, education, social assistance, and something that we can be also involved. And how here I'm putting, how can we as health professionals can help with this obesity crisis using obesity with treating obesity with a plant-based nutrition. And here I can put you using our local food as a good example that we can work with the local population, especially when we treat like poor population. That is important for them to know that they don't need to shift for their regular diet from the foods they already know. We have like our most traditional food in Brazil is called feijoada. Is basically a food with rice, kale, orange, black beans, but the traditional dish is use meat. And here I put a plant-based version with vegetables instead of meat, with the black beans. This is a full plant-based meal, very rich in protein, in fiber, in vitamins, and is cheaper than meat. Another thing that Brazil can use advantage of, that we are as a tropical country, we have a lot of fruits and vegetables that are very cheap and very accessible. We can help these tools to address with our patients, with public efforts, public health, with lobby, that we have the tools, we have the meanings. And we know, and research already know, that plant-based diets can aid weight loss, improve metabolic health, and reduce obesity-related conditions. We have nutrition benefits like high fiber, nutrition-dense foods help regulate satiety and reduce calorie intake. So we can use local food, fresh foods, to address to people that's more healthier, more sustainable, and when we talk about poor population, is more cheaper. And I want my last slide, and I'm just finished, is when we can use our knowledge for nutrition, for plant-based nutrition, And we are working, that's something that is very good news, the first that we are launching. We are partnered with the Vegetarian Society in Brazil to tackle this Brazil childhood obesity. We are launching in the next weeks a Brazil childhood obesity campaign in partnership with Vegetarian Society. The campaign will include practical resource and easy plant-based recipes to help children. This material will be held in several public schools. This is just a preview because we are waiting for like City Hall approval. But this is to distribute to children, for their families, to learn how easy to have a healthy meal. And again, using our local foods and simple ingredients. We have in Brazil a very traditional snack. There is cheese bread, and we are distributing in this material a very plant-based version with tapioca starch. That is very common in Brazil. So to show these people, these families, these children that can continue to eat good food, but healthy in a better way. So I think this is my last one. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I maybe try speak a little bit faster, I don't know. But I'm very happy with this opportunity. If anyone in Brazil or other countries want to partner with healthy food, healthy practical, can reach out to me in Brazil, to Nanine, to our offices. We are here to partner to work for a better and a sustainable and healthier planet and for people. And thank you.
Thank you, Candice. Your presentation on the context of obesity in Brazil is very fascinating. Thank you so much for bringing your perspective. And with the burden of obesity being very high in Brazil, especially among children, it's also interesting to hear about the policies that are in place and your initiatives and campaigns that you are using to overcome obesity together. So I hope that some of our audience members feel inspired by the actions that are being taken, and that you also similarly would like to look at campaigns in your own context. And if that is the case, then please do reach out to us for our support. And now I'm really, really excited to be introducing our keynote speaker and welcoming Dr. Michael Greger. Dr. Michael Greger is a physician, author, and internationally recognized professional speaker on a number of important public health issues. He is the founder of nutritionfacts.org, a nonprofit science-based website providing constant free video updates on the latest evidence-based nutrition. And I know a lot of us get a lot of value from these videos that summarize the evidence so nicely. So thank you, and over to you, Dr. Greger.
Hello, hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Let me share my slides. I am a huge fan of PAN and encourage everyone to get involved, to join, to donate. You know, I often say how, all the proceeds from all my books are all donated to charity. Well, what are these charities that I am so enamored with? One of them is PAN. And so I encourage you to join me in supporting them. And so I'm excited to be here to share a little bit about evidence-based weight loss from my book, How Not to Diet, which was published a few years ago. Surely, if there was some safe, simple, side effect-free solution to the obesity epidemic, we'd know about it, right? I'm not so sure. It may take an average of 17 years before research evidence makes it into day-to-day clinical practice. To take one example that was particularly poignant for my family, heart disease. Decades ago, Dr. Nourish and colleagues published evidence in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world that our leading cause of death could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes alone, yet hardly anything changed. Even now, hundreds of thousands of Americans not to mention those around the rest of the world continue to needlessly die from what we learned decades ago was a potentially reversible condition. I had seen it with my own eyes. My grandmother was cured of her end-stage heart disease by one of Dean's contemporaries, Nathan Pritikin, using similar methods. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but after one too many open-heart surgeries, they was just so scarred up inside, there's nothing more they could do. But thanks to a healthy diet, she was able to live another 31 years on this earth till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. So, if effectively the cure to our #1 killer of men and women could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients but just didn't have a corporate budget to drive its promotion? Well, I made it my life mission to find out. That's why I became a physician in the first place, and why I started my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. No ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles almost every day, and the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. Okay, so what does the science show is the best way to lose weight? If you want testimonials and before and after pictures, you have come to the wrong place. I'm not interested in anecdotes. I'm interested in evidence when it comes to making decisions as life and death important as to the health and being of yourself and your family and your patients. There's really only one question. What does the best available balance of evidence suggest right now? The problem is that even just sticking with the peer-reviewed medical literature is not enough, as false and scientifically unsupported beliefs about obesity are pervasive even in scientific journals. The only way to get at the truth, then, is to dive deep in the primary literature and read all the original studies themselves, but who's got time for that? There are more than 500,000 scientific papers on obesity, with 100 new ones published every day. But that's what we do at nutritionfacts.org. We comb through tens of thousands of studies every year, so busy folks like you don't have to. And indeed, we uncovered a treasure trove of buried data, like today I'll cover simple spices proven in randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials to accelerate weight loss for just pennies a day, but with so little profit potential, it's no wonder these studies never saw the light of day. The only profiting I care about, though, is your health. That's why 100% of the proceeds from all my books, DVDs, speaking engagements, all donated to charities like Physicians Association for Nutrition. I just want to do for your family what Pritikin did for my family. But wait, isn't weight loss just about eating less and moving more? I mean, isn't a calorie a calorie? That's what the food industry wants you to think. The notion that a calorie from one source is just as fattening as a calorie from any other is a trope broadcast by the food industry as a way to absolve itself of culpability. Coca-Cola even put out an ad emphasizing the one simple common sense fact. As the current and past chairs of Harvard's nutrition department put it, the central argument from industry is that the overconsumption of calories from carrots
Be patient a little bit.
would be no different from the overconsumption of calories from soda. Well, if a calorie is a calorie, why does it matter what kind of foods we put in our mouth? Right? Well, let's explore that example of carrots versus Coca-Cola. It's true that in a tightly controlled laboratory setting, 240 calories of carrots, 10 carrots, would have the same effect on calorie balance as the 240 calories in a bottle of Coke, but the comparison falls flat on its face out in the real world. You could chug those liquid candy calories down in less than a minute, but eating 240 calories of carrots might take you more than 2.5 hours of constant chewing. Not only would your jaw get sore, but 240 calories of carrots is like 5 cups of carrots. You may not even be able to fit them all in. Our stomach's only so big. Once we fill it up, stretch receptors in our stomach wall tell us when we've had enough, but different foods have different amounts of calories per stomachful. Some foods have more calories per cup, per pound, per kilo, per mouthful than others. This is the concept of calorie density, the number of calories for a given amount of food. For example, as you can see, oil has a high calorie density, means a high calorie concentration, lots of calories packed in a small space. So, drizzling just a tablespoon of oil on a dish adds over 100 calories. I mean, for those same calories, you could have instead eaten about 2 cups of blackberries, for example, a food with a low calorie density. So these two meals have the same number of calories. I mean, you could swig down that spoonful of oil and not even feel a difference in your stomach, but eating a couple cups of berries could start to fill you up. That's why, yes, biochemically, a calorie is a calorie, but eating the same amount of calories in different forms can have different effects. The average human stomach can expand to fit about 4 cups of food, so a single stomachful of strawberry ice cream could max out our caloric intake for the entire day. But to get those same 2,000 calories from strawberries themselves, well, you'd have to eat 44 cups of berries, right? That's 11 stomachfuls, right? As delicious as berries are, I don't think I could fill my stomach to bursting 11 times a day. Some foods are just impossible to overeat, so low in calorie density that you just couldn't physically fit enough in your stomach to even maintain your weight. In a lab, a calorie is a calorie, but in life, far from it. Traditional weight loss diets focus on decreasing portion size, but we know that these eat less approaches can leave people feeling hungry, unsatisfied. A more effective approach may be to shift the emphasis from restriction to positive eat more messaging of increasing intake of healthy, low-calorie density foods, but you don't know until you put it to the test. Researchers in Hawaii tried putting people on a more traditional Hawaiian diet with all the plant foods you could eat, unlimited quantities of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and the study subjects lost an average of 17 pounds in just 21 days. Calorie intake dropped by 40%, but not because they were eating less food, right? They lost 7.8 kilograms in 3 weeks, eating more food, in excess of about 4 pounds of food a day. How could that be? Well, because whole plant foods tend to be so calorically dilute, you could stuff yourself without getting the same kind of weight gain, right? They lost 7.8 kilos in 3 weeks, eating more food. That's why, in my book, How Not to Diet, which I'm very excited about, that's why low-calorie density is on my list of the 17 ingredients for an ideal weight loss diet. Since Americans average about 3 pounds of food a day, then if you stuck with mostly these foods, then you see how you could eat more food and still shed weight. Vegetables have the lowest calorie density, and so researchers at Penn State decided to put it to the test. Study subjects were served pasta and told to eat as much or as little as they wanted. On average, they consumed about 900 calories of pasta. Now, what do you think would happen if, as a first course, you gave them 100 calories of salad, composed largely of lettuce, carrots, cucumbers, celery, and cherry tomatoes? Would they go on to eat the same amount of pasta and end up with a 1,000-calorie lunch, right? 900 plus 100? Or would they eat 100 fewer calories of pasta, effectively canceling out the added salad calories? No, it was even better than that. They ate more than 200 fewer calories of pasta. Thanks to the salad, 100 calories in, 200 calories out. So in a sense, the salad had negative 100 calories, right? Preloading with vegetables can effectively subtract 100 calories out of a meal. That's how you can lose weight, by eating more food. Of course, the type of salad matters, right? The researchers repeated the experiment, adding a fatty dressing and a bunch of shredded cheese, which quadrupled the salad's calorie density. Eating this salad as a first course didn't turn the 900-calorie meal into one with less than 800 calories. Instead, it turned it into a meal with calories in the triple digits. It's like preloading pizza with garlic bread or something. You can end up with more calories overall. So what's the cutoff? Well, studies on preloading show that eating about a cup of food before a meal decreases subsequent intake by about 100 calories. So to get a negative calorie effect, the first course would have to contain fewer than 100 calories per cup. As you can see in the chart, that includes most fresh fruits and vegetables, but having something like a dinner roll simply would not work. But give people a large apple to eat before that same pasta meal, and rather than consuming about 200 calories less, it was like 300 calories less, right? So how many calories does an apple have? It depends on when you eat it. Before a meal, an apple can effectively have about negative 200 calories. You see the same thing giving people vegetable soup as a first course. Hundreds of calories disappear. One study that tracked people's intake throughout the day even found that overweight subjects randomized to pre-lunch vegetable soup not only ate less at lunch, but deducted an extra bonus 100 calories at dinner, too, a whole 7 hours later. So, the next time you sit down for some healthy soup, you can imagine calories being veritably sucked out of your system with every spoonful. Even just drinking 2 cups of water immediately before a meal causes people to eat about 20% less, taking about 100 fewer calories. No wonder overweight men and women randomized to 2 cups of water before each meal lost weight 44% faster. 2 cups of water before each meal, 44% faster weight loss. But how would you ever hear about such a study, right? Never going to see an ad on TV for tap water, but that's why so-called negative calorie preloading is on my list of weight loss boosters, which are things that I could find that can accelerate weight loss regardless of what you eat the rest of the time. Anything we can put on that first course salad to boost weight loss even further? Well, in my Amping AMPK section, I talk about ways to activate an enzyme known as the fat controller. Its discovery is considered one of the most important medical breakthroughs in the last few decades. You can activate this enzyme through exercise, fasting, and nicotine, but is there any way to boost it for weight loss without sweat, hunger, or the whole dying a horrific death from lung cancer thing? Well, Big Pharma is all over it. After all, obese individuals may be unwilling to perform even a minimum of physical activity, wrote a group of pharmacologists, thus indicating that drugs mimicking endurance exercise are highly desirable. So it's crucial that oral compounds with high bioavailability are developed to safely induce chronic AMP activation for long-term weight loss and maintenance. But there's no need to develop such a compound since you can already buy it at any store. It's called vinegar. When vinegar, acetic acid, is absorbed and metabolized, you get a natural AMPK boost, enough of a boost to lose weight at a typical dose you might get dressing a salad. I mean, vinegar has evidently been used to treat obesity for centuries, but only recently has it been put to the test. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial on the effects of vinegar intake on the reduction of body fat in overweight men and women. Subjects were randomized to drink a daily beverage containing 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, or a placebo control group drinking a beverage developed to taste the same as the vinegar drink, but prepared with a different kind of acid, so it didn't have any actual vinegar. 3 months in, the fake vinegar placebo group actually gained body fat, as overweight people tend to do over time, whereas the genuine vinegar group significantly lost body fat, as determined by CT scan. A little covert vinegar a day led to pounds of weight loss, achieved for just pennies a day without removing anything from their diet. That's why one of my 21 tweaks to accelerate weight loss is 2 teaspoons of vinegar with each meal, either sprinkled on your salad or even just added to tea with some lemon juice or something. The vinegar studies are nice in that they were placebo-controlled. That's hard to do with food. It's hard to, you can't stuff, cabbage into a capsule. But there are some foods so potent that you could actually fit them in a pill to pit them against placebo, and that's spices. Want to know if garlic can cause weight loss? Well, give people some garlic powder pills versus placebo pills, and garlic worked, resulting in both a drop in weight and waistlines within 6 weeks. They used about a half a teaspoon of garlic powder a day, which would cost, at least here in the States, less than 4 cents. And if 4 cents is too steep, how about 2 cents? A quarter teaspoon of garlic powder a day. But 100 overweight men and women randomized to a quarter teaspoon worth of garlic powder a day or a placebo, and those unknowingly taking the 2 cents worth of garlic powder a day lost about 6 pounds of straight fat over the next 15 weeks. Now, if you can splurge up to 3 cents a day, there's black cumin. A meta-analysis of a randomized controlled trial shows weight loss efficacy with, again, just a quarter teaspoon a day. What is black cumin? Well, you obviously have not been reading your Bible. Described as a miracle herb, besides the weight loss, there are randomized controlled trials showing daily black cumin consumption significantly improves cholesterol and triglycerides, significantly improves blood pressure and blood sugar control. But I use it just because it tastes good. It's just a spice. You can put black cumin seeds in a pepper grinder, just grind it on like black pepper. With more than 1,000 papers published in the medical literature on black cumin, some reporting extraordinary results, like dropping cholesterol levels as much as a introductory dose of a statin drug. Why don't we hear more about it? Why weren't we all taught about it in medical school? Presumably because there's no profit motive, right? Black cumin is just a common natural spice. You're not going to thrill your stockholders selling something you can't patent that costs 3 cents a day. Or you can use regular cumin, the second most popular spice on earth. Those randomized to a half teaspoon of both lunch and dinner over 3 months lost about,
Ele tava olhando o tempo, sabe?
lost
Assim,
about
não
4
fiz todo
more
o
pounds, an extra inch off their waist, found comparable to the obesity drug known as Orlistat. That's the anal leakage drug you may have heard about, though the drug company apparently prefers the term fecal spotting to describe the rectal discharge it causes. The drug company's website offered some helpful hints, some helpful tips, though. It's probably a smart idea to wear dark pants and bring a change of clothes with you to work, just in case the drug causes you to crap your pants at work. I think I'll stick with the cumin. Cayenne pepper can counteract the metabolic slowing that accompanies weight loss and accelerate fat burning as a bonus. Ginger powder, over a dozen randomized controlled trials, starting just a quarter teaspoon of ground ginger a day, significantly decreasing body weight for just pennies a day, proven in placebo-controlled trials to work, but we probably never heard about any of this because they can't make enough profit. If there was one piece of advice that best sums up the recommendations from my book, How Not to Diet, it would be wall off your calories. Animal cells are encased only in easily digestible easily digestible membranes, which allow the enzymes in their gut to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. Plant cells, on the other hand, have cell walls that are made out of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier, so many of the calories remain trapped. Processed plant foods, however, like fruit juice, sugar, refined grains, even whole grains, if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structures destroyed, their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking. But when we eat structurally intact plant foods, chew all you want, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber, which then blunts the glycemic impact, activates what's called the ileal brake, which is a GLP-1 signaling pathway that decreases appetite, as well as delivering sustenance to our friendly flora. So, Bottom line, we try to make sure as many of our calories as possible, our protein, our carbs, our fat, are encased in cell walls, in other words, from whole, intact plant foods. That's what nature intended to happen, right? Millions of years before we learned how to sharpen spears and mill grains and boil sugar cane, our entire physiology is presumed to have evolved in the context of eating what the rest of our great ape cousins eat, and that's plants. The Paleolithic period, when we started using tools, only goes back about 2 million years. We know the great apes have been evolving since back in the Miocene era, more like 20 million years ago. So for the first 90% of our hominoid existence, our bodies evolved on mostly plants. It's no wonder, then, our body may thrive best on the diet we were designed to eat, so maybe we should go back to our roots. With enough portion control, anyone can lose weight. Lock someone in a closet, right? You force them to lose as much body fat as you want. Chaining someone to a treadmill could have a similar effect. But what's the most effective weight loss regimen that doesn't involve calorie restriction or exercise or a felony? Well, I scour the medical literature, looking at all the randomized controlled trials, and the single most successful strategy to date is a diet of whole plant foods. The single most effective weight loss intervention like that ever published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature, a whole food, plant-based diet that worked better than anything else studied to date, and no wonder, given what we just learned about fiber and all the other things I talk about. Well, we have known for more than 40 years that those eating predominantly plant-based diet weigh on average about 30 pounds less than the general population, but you don't know if it's the diet itself until you put it to the test. In 2017, a group of New Zealand researchers published a broad study, 12-week randomized controlled trial, in the poorest region of the country, with the highest rates of obesity. Overweight individuals were randomized to receive either standard medical care or semi-week classes offering advice and encouragement to eat a low-fat diet centered around fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And that's all it was, just empowerment with knowledge. No meals were provided. The interventional group was merely informed about the benefits of plant-based eating and encouraged to incorporate it into their own lives. No significant change in the control group, but the plant-based group, even without any restrictions on portions, and being able to freely eat all the healthy foods they wanted, lost an average of 19 pounds by the end of the 3-month study. Sorry for the bad units here. I should have switched everything over to SI units. Now, 19 pounds, respectable weight loss, but what happened next? At the end of those 12 weeks, class was dismissed. No more instruction was given. Researchers were curious, though, to see how much weight the subjects would have gained back after being released from the study. So everyone was invited back at the 6-month mark to get reweighed. The plant-based group had left the 3-month study 19 pounds lighter, but after 6 months, they were only down to 27 pounds. They got even better. The plant-based group have been feeling so good, both physically and mentally, have been able to get off so many of their medications that they were sticking with the diet on their own, and the weight continued to come off. What about a year later? Well, even in studies that last a whole year, right, where people are coached to stay on a particular diet the entire time, that by the end of the year, any initial weight loss in the first few months tends to creep on back. Well, the broad study only lasted 3 months, yet after it was over, those who had been randomized to the plant-based group not only lost dozens of pounds, they kept it off. That only achieved greater weight loss in 6 and 12 months than any other comparable trial. This was months after the study had already ended. A whole food plant-based diet achieved the greatest weight loss ever recorded compared to any other such intervention published in the medical literature. You can read the record-breaking study in full for free at nature.com/article/NUTD2173, or you can point your phone camera at the screen and just pick off the QR code. Any diet that results in reduced caloric intake can result in weight loss, right? Dropping pounds isn't so much the issue. The problem is keeping them off. And a key difference between plant-based nutrition and more traditional approaches to weight loss is that people are encouraged to eat ad libitum, right? Which means eat as much as you want, right? No calorie counting, no portion control, just eating, right? The strategy is to improve the quality of the food rather than decreasing or restricting the quantity of food. If you put people on a diet packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and allow them to eat as much as they want, they end up eating about 50% fewer calories than they would have otherwise, just as full on half the calories. This is the kind of caloric drop you see with like tirzepatide, right? Mounjaro, the kind of souped-up Ozempic version. That's the kind of drop. But these people were doing it without the drugs. You say, wait a second, how can people be satisfied cutting more than 1,000 calories out of their daily diets by eating more high-bulk, low-calorie density foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and fewer calorie-dense foods like the meats, cheeses, sugars, and fats? But it may not just be the calories inside of the equation. Those eating more plant-based appear to be effectively burning more calories in their sleep. The resting metabolic rate of those eating more plant-based may be 10% higher, more a boosted metabolism that can translate into burning off hundreds of extra calories a day more without doing a thing. Eating more plant-based, you burn more calories just being alive, just existing. So no wonder why those eating more plant-based tend to be slimmer. Start packing your diet with real food that grows out of the ground, and the kilos should come off naturally, taking you down towards your ideal weight. What about ketogenic diets? Fat loss actually slows down when you switch to a ketogenic diet because your body starts cannibalizing its own protein. Just looking at the bathroom scale, though, the keto diet seems to be a smashing success, losing less than a pound a week on a regular diet to, boom, 3.5 pounds within 7 days after switching to keto. But what was happening inside their bodies told a totally different story. On the ketogenic diet, their rate of fat loss was slowed by more than half. So most of what they were losing was water, but they were also losing protein, also losing lean mass. This may help explain why the leg muscles of CrossFit trainees placed on a ketogenic diet can shrink as much as 8% within 2 months. Exercise is supposed to make your muscles get bigger, not smaller. Of course, even if keto diet works, the point of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket. People whose diets even tend to trend that way appear to live significantly shorter lives. On the other hand, even just drifting in the direction of eating more healthy plant foods is associated with living longer. Those going the other way, though, those who start out eating plant-based but then add meat to their diet at least once a week, not only appear to double or triple their odds of diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and weight gain, but they also may suffer an associated 3.6-year drop in life expectancy. That's going from no meat to just once a week meat or more. Low-carb diets have been shown to impair artery function and worsen heart disease, whereas whole food plant-based diets have been shown to actually reverse heart disease. That's what Ornish used. So what happens to be the most effective weight loss diet just so happens to be the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, right? If my grandma didn't have to die like that, maybe no one's grandma has to die like that. If that's all a plant-based diet can do, reverse the #1 killer of men and women, I mean, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, or reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating overwhelming. Only one diet has been shown to do all that, a diet centered around whole plant foods. We don't have to mortgage our health to lose weight. The single healthiest diet appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss. After all, permanent weight loss requires permanent dietary change. Healthier habits just have to become a way of life, and if they're going to be lifelong, you want them to lead to a long life. Thankfully, the single best diet proven for weight loss may just so happen to be the safest, cheapest way to eat for the longest, healthiest life. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gregor, for your insightful presentation on weight loss specifically. It was a great presentation with many golden nuggets, I think, for our audience of health professionals that they can implement into their practice and maybe also their daily lives. So this was a great way to spend our World Obesity Day 2025. And we really do appreciate your support of PAN and for joining our global community today. So I encourage everybody to look up Dr. Gregor's book called How Not to Diet, and you can learn even more. So yes, now is the time for questions. And I invite you to submit your questions via the chat. But before you ask your questions, we would like to ask you some questions. So we have our global community platform called PANCO, which is the home to hundreds of health professionals like yourselves. And we have a space there that is dedicated to polls and questions. So while we give everybody a chance to submit their questions for Candice and Dr. Gregor in the chat, I will be navigating to Panko so that we can get our polls answered over there. So please continue to post your questions in the chat. So our first question this evening, we have two questions, and you can answer these questions by clicking the link in the chat. It will direct you to our platform Panko. If you're not a part yet, you can become a free member and then engage with our community here. So our first question is, what aspects of our surroundings do you think most impact obesity? Firstly, access to healthy versus unhealthy food, walkability and recreational spaces, social norms and media influences, or all of the above? And you can answer directly on Panko. And then we have one more question that we'd love to hear from the audience, and that is, do you think obesity is mostly caused by patients' decisions, negative or positive? So I'll give everybody a few seconds to answer the poll and to navigate. And then everybody else, please put your questions in the chat so that we can ask Candice and Dr. Gregor in a minute. So we already have some answers coming in here. Very mixed opinions on whether obesity is caused by patients' decisions or not. Let me refresh and see if more have come in. Definitely mixed perspectives over here. And then we have majority, at least we've had over 20 people respond to this multiple choice question, saying that our surroundings, all aspects of our surroundings actually influence obesity in our community. And then a strong belief here in the community that government policies are strongly impacting obesity. So there are many different versions of government policies, including food labeling, etc. So I encourage you to carry on answering the poll. And now I will stop sharing my screen and take a look at some of the questions. So we did have one question coming in from the chat, and Dr. Gregor, I think this would be for you. Does black cumin oil have the same effect as the seeds or ground cumin powder? Do you perhaps have an answer over there?
So the studies were done with ground cumin, black cumin powder. So we don't know if the seeds would have the same effect, the whole seeds, or whether just the oil. We don't know if the active ingredient and/or ingredients are fat soluble, and so it would end up in the oil. So I encourage people to just use black cumin powder, since that's what was shown to be effective in the study.
Thank you. Thanks for answering. So we have another question, and I'm sure this is actually a question that's on many minds tonight. How much do you think the rise of Ozempic is making health organizations and people take the role of nutrition less seriously for tackling obesity? We have managed to get through the conversation without yet mentioning Ozempic, so it's a good time to answer that question. Dr. Greger, what do you think?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that obesity so dramatically decreases one's lifespan, reducing life expectancy as much as 6 or 7 years, that like bariatric surgery, it should be considered as a last resort. These drugs should be considered as a last resort for those unwilling or unable to treat the cause of their obesity. The problem is that people eat too much crap. So anything that gets people to eat less crap can be beneficial, but you don't need a $1,000 drug to decrap your diet. And the drug mechanism, the GLP-1 agonist activity can be replicated through the consumption of thylakoids, which are basically green leafy vegetables, groats, intact whole grains, which result in the production of postbiotics like butyrate that have a GLP-1 boosting effect. I actually wrote a book about this class of drugs last year called Ozempic, Risk, Benefits, and Natural Alternatives. So I encourage people to go there to be able to counsel people about it. I mean, it's kind of perverse that big food addicts people to junk food on purpose for profit and then fattens the coffers of big pharma to treat at high cost and some risk an array of health problems that really need never have occurred in the first place.
Thank you so much for your answer. I have a question for Candice that has come through on Panko ahead of the time. And this is, speaking especially of Brazil, why are taxes on ultra-processed foods lower than fresh produce? Is there any way we can fight against this as citizens? Wouldn't this be the first step in moving against obesity? So I know you touched on this in your presentation, Candice, but perhaps you have a little bit more to share.
Yes, so I think as many countries in Brazil, the industry has a huge lobby with the government, with taxes. So last year we had a bill that tried to put a lot of improve the taxes, higher the taxes with a lot of ultra processed food, but the industry came with a huge lobby. A lot of civil society organizations and people pressure that representatives in the government to try to stop that. I think the law that was approved in December is kind of like in the middle, that both sides compromise. So I think it's a never-ending work that we have to have with governments, with our representatives, because the industry is doing the same. So we have like this new tax on sugar drinks, but there are so many other ultra processed foods that keep out of the new law. So that's something that we need keep working on it.
I wanted to just add something based on that. The questions in the poll about kind of the role of environment versus personal responsibility. I think it's really important to understand that obesity is not some moral failing. The battle of the bulge is a battle against biology. We are living in a toxic food environment, floating in a sea of excess calories, drowning in a sea of excess calories, while being bombarded for ads for fast food and junk food and candy. Becoming overweight is a normal, natural response to an abnormal, unnatural ubiquity of sugary fatty foods concentrated in calories.
Yeah, just add one comment. I think when you think about obesity, just complementing the previous response about Dr. Michael Greger, we can relate, for example, the Ozempic with like obesity in poor people in Brazil. and the importance of nutrition, because Ozempic is an expensive tool. I think it's important new tool for treating obesity, but nutrition will keep this role, because for poor people it's not affordable to buy this kind of medication. So as a physicians, dietitians, and health professionals, our role with nutrition will keep so important to educate these people to eat better and make healthier choice. So I think is also everything is connected when we talk about eating better and healthier.
Yeah, and reflecting on the how important the food environment is, we had an interesting story from South Africa in the last week, because there were some questions about what's happening around the world, and we saw McDonald's actually donating school desks, branded desks for school children in South Africa in the last week, and we did support the a coalition of public health organizations rejecting that. But the influence of industry and of fast food and food environments cannot be understated, especially when it comes to children. All right. There are a lot of interesting questions that I have on Panko and over here. I would like to maybe draw on this question about processed foods and ultra-processed foods. So we have a question that says, what does the science say about the consumption of plant-based processed food for weight loss? And I know that is quite a broad category, but any insights from the panelists?
So, a book I'm working on right now is actually answering that exact question. Should be out in a few months on ultra processed plant foods. And so, the key question in nutrition is always compared to what, right? So, is a food, are eggs healthy? Well, compared to what? Compared to a breakfast link sausage? Well, yeah, sure. But compared to oatmeal, not even close, right? Is fish healthy? Well, compared to, bologna, yes. But, compared to, chickpeas, no. So, so the same thing with this. I mean, so when we're talking about the alternative, so like these ultra processed plant-based meat alternatives, the veggie burgers, etc., would be far superior than their meat comparators, but that says less about how healthy these foods are and really more about how unhealthy modern meat is, right? Meat is, processed meat is carcinogenic, right? According to the IARC, a known human carcinogen, contributing to colorectal cancer, the number one cancer killer of non-smokers. And so, I mean, compared to that, anything, almost anything is good. Now, would they be as good as whole plant foods? No. But what I think these processed foods can offer is a stepping stone, is a transition food. Not everyone, can go all kale and quinoa overnight, but these foods can offer the same kind of mouthfeel and and flavor that we've the foods that people have grown up with, to move their way along to healthier foods. I wouldn't want people to stall there. I want people to continue to transition towards centering their diets around the healthiest foods, and that is foods from fields, not factories, real food that grows out of the ground, whole plant foods.
Just to add, I agree with Dr. Michael Gregory completely. I think this kind of alternative proteins is to reach a new public, like the public that are eating meat, not necessarily that people that already have like plant-based, are rich of vegetables meat diet. So I this is an important step, like you said, like to transition, because we have the majority of the population still eats a large amount of meat. So when we talk about environment, animal welfare, I think there's important keystone, and also for our diets, because like you said, even that it's not healthier, is healthy than when we compare like the meats with a high intake of saturated fats. So I think it's not at the end, but is a good in the between, or to go for animal diet, for plant-based diet.
Thank you so much for your answers and for your insights. I have some very interesting questions coming through in the chat, but I was wondering, you know, you've heard my voice for quite a while now. Is there anybody else who maybe asked a question that hasn't been answered? And you can put your hand up and ask our panelists directly. We'd love to hear the questions coming from the audience. So if there's anybody who would like to ask a direct question, please do put your hand up and I will unmute you. Nobody? All right, then I guess I will continue to ask the questions. So, very interesting question that I think is very important is the most recent question here in the chat. What do you think would have the most impact on counseling patients, especially kids, on obesity? If you only have brief contact, like 5 to 10 minutes with patients, first start with cutting out processed foods or cutting down animal foods, or what would be the first and most important approach, since you can only lecture your patient on so much in 5 minutes? And I think that question reflects a challenge that many health professionals have, which is too many patients, too little time. So when you are pressed for time, what would you think is in your 1 minute, what would you say to your patients on obesity or on weight loss?
Can I go first? So
Please.
yeah, I think with a very like brief answer, I think sodas and soft drinks are the number one, because I think many kids is easy to buy, easy to get, and so they have in schools, at home. So I think the starting with that, and I think is the first tip. I think is in just 1 minute to go.
You don't even need a minute. Just a few seconds in sharing resources. You can share good books, good websites, good documentaries. You can send people to Pan's website. We have, handouts and little booklets and things you can hand people. And so then they can kind of learn on their own. If there were just, However, if there were just 3 foods I would encourage people to add to their diets, and 3 foods to remove from their diets, 3 foods would be berries, the healthiest fruits, greens, the healthiest vegetables, and legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, or lentils, the healthiest source of protein. And if there's only 3 things to remove from one's diet, it'd be trans fats, these partially hydrogenated oils, which aren't legal here. I'm not sure about Brazil. Number 2, processed meats, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, sausage, etc., because they're cancer causing. And also, liquid candy, soda, sugar sweetened beverages. That would be also something I would first remove from someone's diet.
Yeah, those were some great quick recommendations, and you're so right that there's so many resources these days that can support patients and professionals. So I didn't plan that, but I did have a link ready to share with everybody our fact sheets on obesity and on weight loss that are specifically designed for professionals. So please do follow that link and download it completely for free and find many other resources in our free library. So I'm very happy to see the brave ones who have put their hands up. So I think Vanessa, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, so thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic. And it was my question actually about Ozempic, and I have read your book on Ozempic. I've got to finish the last bit, but really fantastic. And exactly what you said was really helpful. My question was more about the role that people will think nutrition has because of the rise of Ozempic, and not maybe the threat isn't quite right there, but from conversations being had and maybe the role that it has, is it making people actually take that nutrition less seriously? And of course, there's this big education role we need in showing people how we can stimulate GLP-1 receptors, etc. But can you say a bit about how you think we need to react with those conversations so that people really take the role of nutrition very seriously here?
So good to see you, Vanessa.
Good to see you too.
I missed you last time I came through the UK.
Next time.
Next time. So no, it's a fantastic question. Uh, basically the same answer is basically you give to, like, cholesterol lowering drugs or something like that. And the answer is, well, wait a second, if I take Lipitor, do I not have to, do anything? Why do I have to eat healthy if I can just take a pill? And the answer is, oh, well, you obviously overestimate the power of these pills and procedures to actually reduce disease and death, as opposed to these lifestyle measures to actually treat the underlying cause. And so, if you know all the statistics at your fingertips, you can be like, even in secondary prevention, someone who's already had a heart attack, preventing their second heart attack, the absolute risk reduction over about 6 years is 2.8%, something like that. Basically, 97% of people would not benefit from it. And so it's like, well, wait a second, it's only decreasing my risk 2%. Not only am I not even going to take those drugs, but it just gives a sense of, oh my God, I really have to change my diet. And the same thing goes Ozempic. So as you read in the book, all the major trials that have been done on Ozempic, right? People started out obese and on average end up obese by the time the drug stops working and plateaus. After a year, you have to take this drug every day, every week for the rest of your life. And as soon as you stop, of course, the weight comes back and you plateau still obese on average. And so you are paying, so you're experiencing and risking all the adverse and potential adverse effects, paying through the nose every day for the rest of your life, and you're still obese. You're still suffering from the ravages of obesity, but you're at increased risk for osteoarthritis and diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because you're not treating the underlying cause. And so I think people overestimate the power of these drugs. These drugs are revolutionary compared to every other drug that's been in the past, right? The history of weight loss drugs on planet Earth have been an absolute sham disaster. On average, haven't shown more than like 5% weight loss. All sorts of, most drugs have been pulled from the market for killing people, cause heart valve problems. It's just like an absolute shameful, terrible history of non-efficacy, non-safety. And so all of a sudden a drug comes along where actually you can actually see not 5%, but you can see 10, 15, 20% weight loss. Wow, a weight loss drug that actually caused weight loss, like mind-blowing. No wonder that was so kind of revolutionary. But so compared to all the other drugs, absolutely amazing miracle, right? But if you look at it, just its kind of absolute benefits beyond just in comparison to all the other drugs, you see very similar kind of bariatric surgery effects. That's great in terms of reducing, heart disease and risk and diabetes risk, but does not completely eliminate one's risk. And the only way to really eliminate one's risk, get down to a normal weight, is to eat a healthy enough diet. And that is something that we can offer. But again, if you're unwilling or unable to do that, right? If people aren't going to change their diet, guess what? They should be on statin drugs, right? Guess what? They should be on Ozempic. Guess what? They should be on blood pressure medications and blood sugar lowering medications. Slow down the rate at which diabetics go blind and lose their lower limbs and lose their kidney function. Hey, that's better than an accelerated amputation schedule. But let's treat the cause. We can do that with lifestyle medicine.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. I have one more hand up. Go ahead, Marielle.
It's Marielle, thank you. Dr. Gregor, I'm a surgical oncologist in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, and I'm treating a lot of patients with breast cancer. And as you know, most of the time for a great deal of patients, their obesity is one of the factors that they get breast cancer in the first place. And I try to get an entrance to speak about them to their about their weight, but can you give me some advice at what time I should bring this subject up, and if it's we're not giving them the feeling that it's their own fault to get breast cancer?
That's a really fantastic insight, in that the more power, the more control that we have over disease and disability, well, you think that's great news, right? Well, the more power we have, well, then the more responsibility right? I mean, it goes together. And so it's like, wow, that's fantastic that we have such, tremendous control. But what does that mean for someone who's already been diagnosed? Well, we can still leverage that control by saying, if you look, there are breast cancer survival studies, those that, include soy in the diet, lose weight, lower fat diets, all on down the list, associated with improved breast cancer survival, decreased, decreased risk of cancer coming back. And for most postmenopausal breast cancer, women with invasive breast cancer, the number one killer is actually heart disease, not breast cancer. Women with invasive breast, I mean, it's very small. It's right about like 1% more than actually the breast cancer killing them. But the number one reason that they'll die is actually not the breast cancer. It's still actually heart disease in most countries. And so it's critically important to eat a heart healthy diet, and has all these other beneficial effects. And so you can still really kind of promote how much power that they have over their condition, in hopes of kind of inspiring change and affecting the whole rest of the family. And but I totally understand. It's a very sensitive issue, because you're like, wait a second, are you telling me that, so when you tell a smoker diagnosed with lung cancer, you really should stop smoking? Wait, you're saying well, the important thing now is that by stopping smoking, you can improve your chances of survival, right? Let's just, right now, we can't control the past, but the good news is that we can actually affect things from now on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Andrew. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Nanine, and thank you for the presentations. In South Africa and many developing countries, stunting is a big problem. And stunting occurs often prior to birth with intrauterine growth retardation. Dr. Grigor, how is that metabolic pathway of making stunted and growth retarded children more vulnerable to obesity? And maybe those insights, obviously the whole food plant-based interventions would help, but those metabolic pathways.
That's an excellent question. Maybe Candice would be better, have more experience with impoverished communities than I, and may be able to help you with that.
Yeah, I don't think we have like a easy answer. I think for example in Brazil the government has a lot of public policies to help like poor communities. We have like, for example, some fortify like the flour, some aliments and so on, to help with this kind of malnutrition and so on. But I don't know exactly if you have like one answer for this.
No,
For
I know
everyone in South Africa, if you could please take Elon back, we'd really appreciate it.
I think Andrew, your question is quite probably very complex, with the effects that intrauterine growth has on the rest of your life, and the impacts that you have when you're in the uterus for the rest of your life. Did you have another question, or want to expand on that?
I just, well, I heard and I thought that because they are starving in utero, they are metabolically more adept, and therefore any excess calories is more easily metabolized into fat. So
Yeah, we saw it
but
with the Great Dutch Famine cohort, where there does indeed seem to be that kind of increased risk, and that's thanks to the role of epigenetics, where even people born in different climates are born with a different density of sweat glands on their skin. So wait a second, same genetics, different phenotypic expression. That's all thanks to epigenetics, which is again good news, meaning genes are not necessarily our destiny, we can have control over, regardless of what kind of genetic risks we've been built up with.
Okay, so we have had actually very fruitful discussion with our questions and answers, and I think I'm going to end off with one last question that has been voted up in the chat. So this question is, could you elaborate on or react to the following very common argument? And yes, I'm sure everybody here has heard this argument before. Plant-based protein isn't ideal in weight loss due to it typically being high in carbs and has a limited amino acid profile. Therefore, one would need to eat a lot to get enough protein, and by that time, carbs, thus kilocalories, will be overloaded too.
They're talking about the great protein leverage phenomenon, which was shown in the Minnesota starvation experiment. And indeed, if you give people processed plant foods, you can see this phenomenon. And you can show it in rodent studies as well. But if you give people whole plant foods, that's not an issue. In fact, one of the reasons plant protein is preferable is because the baggage that comes along with animal protein, right? Food is a package deal. As much as Burger King says you can have it your way, you can't be like, oh, could I get the iron and the protein, but hold the saturated fat, cholesterol, right? Whereas the baggage that accompanies plant protein, many of the nutrients Americans are lacking, and around most of the rest of the world, not getting enough fiber, not getting enough potassium. And so I mean, here in the States, only 6% of Americans don't get enough protein. It's reversed with fiber. 94% don't even reach the minimum recommended intake of fiber. And this concept of protein quality is really only relevant in the context of protein deficiency. In a famine context, like with something like kwashiorkor, which is combined protein calorie malnutrition, that kind of situation. If you're not getting enough protein, then getting protein that more closely resembles our own is preferable. But outside of a famine context, the quality of protein really should reflect its clinical effects, in which case plant protein sources are far superior, replacing just 3% of daily caloric intake of animal protein with plant protein associated with a 10% decreased risk of all-cause mortality in the largest prospective study in history, the NIH-AARP study. And the Harvard cohorts also found that plant protein beat out every type of animal protein, including fish, chicken, and dairy, for decreasing mortality risks. So that's really where we should prioritize our protein sourcing.
Thank you, and we'll end it on that note. So we've reached the end of our time. Thank you so much, Dr. Greg, for joining us today, for supporting our campaign, Nourish to Thrive, and for Candice and Kirsten, who also shared your insights. And we're so happy that everybody could join us this evening in overcoming obesity together. So join us, stay in touch on Panco, and we will continue this journey together. Thank you so much, and have a lovely rest of your day.